Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome ARTXBLM. We are so excited to finally have you here with us on the podcast. This has been in the works for quite some time, so we can't thank you enough for being here. So I just wanted to start off today's interview by having both of our lovely ladies here just introduce ourselves.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Sophia, and I am the founder and president of ARTXBLM.
Oh, it's me now. Okay. Hi, I'm Charlene, and I oversee the marketing team at ArtXBLM.
Wonderful. So, guys, walk us through exactly what our XBLM is and how did this platform get started?
Sure, yeah. So what ARTXBLM is now, and hopefully what we see in the future also, but currently is basically a website. We're a group of organizers kind of across the world, but mostly the U.S. and Europe. A lot of us are based in the US, and then there's some in the UK and Germany and Belgium. And basically, we're a group of organizers that just volunteer in their free time to make this project that is thinking about how we use art as a vehicle for activism. So currently it's a website where artists donate prints to us, donate their works, and then we sell them as art prints, and then all of the profits from the website go towards anti-racist charities that we vet and select, and then also Black artists make a commission off of the prints that we sell. Um, so yeah, the beginning of ARTXBLM comes from this past summer when kind of the Black Lives Matter movement was in the news again. There were protests spreading around the country and the globe, and everyone was all of a sudden talking about racism in this really different way to, I think, what a lot of people had experienced before, and a lot of people were joining the conversation that hadn't been a part of the conversation before. So I'm from the US, but living in London, was working on my master's degree, and saw the protests happening from abroad, felt a bit isolated being, in a different country. And then
Mhm.
also throughout the pandemic, just being locked in home and thinking about how do I contribute to this movement in a way that matters. And I think as a student, I'm not making a lot of money. And as a person experienced pandemic, I can't go out and do much. So I was like, what can I do from my room and how can we get people involved? So I have a little bit of experience as a graphic designer, and I had seen this thing that a lot of artists were doing online where they would be like, I'll do a commission for you, and the proceeds from the commission I'll donate to the Minnesota Freedom Fund. I saw a lot of people doing that and thought it was
Mhm.
a beautiful idea because we're encouraging artists, supporting artists, and then also, actually raising money. So I was like, maybe I could participate in that, but I don't get a lot of commissions to begin with. So I'm like, how much money will I actually raise there? And thought about how we can take that idea and take it a step further. So I sent a call out. I just made this like very basic graphic and posted it on Facebook and Instagram and was like, do you want to use art for activism? Do you want to use art to support this movement? And a few people responded, a lot of really good friends of mine, and we had this random call in the middle of the summer that was like, okay, what do we do here? What is this going to be? And then from there, we just kind of like figured it out together.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And that was going to be my next question for you guys as well, was what was that turning point for you all? But I think that's so wonderful. I mean, as students, especially, you're surrounded by so many people with different special talents, and you yourself are trying to, figure out how to use your own platform and how to use your own voice. And that's a lot of what me and Bianca had to like discover for ourselves when we were studying and trying to figure out what to do with Artpop Talk. It just starts with an idea, and it really
Mm.
just goes to show, what you can do with art and what you can do with an idea. And one thing that this pandemic has brought us is to think outside the box and how to reach people in those different ways. So I just love what this platform is doing, and just reaching people in that creative way is amazing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it comes at a time when I think a lot of people felt like the only thing that they could do was just post things and like put
Right.
things online, and like all of the all the way that we're consuming things, learning about a movement and learning about racism in this very vulnerable way is online. So it feels really natural that we reach out to each other and kind of organize as a community that way too.
Right. Yeah. And that's exactly how we found you guys. Obviously, you started as an online platform, and that's exactly how we connected. So I think it goes to show, like, back to those positive outlooks on social media as well, like what you really can learn and who you can meet from making online connections that kind of seem at sometimes disconnected in a strange way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to congratulate you all on the launch of your website. It's really exciting. And the website allows people to buy works from Black artists. You were talking about this a little bit more. So can you dive into that a little bit and talk about how this expansion has allowed you all to grow and what it means for artists and the organizations that you guys are connecting with?
Yeah, so primarily it means that we're actually like doing our goal and raising money, which is amazing. Like I said, we started in June of 2020 and our website launched in December. So this was several months in the making. And, like the whole point is that we want to start raising money. So first on that's very exciting. We're actually like doing the thing that we set out to. So there's like a couple of things to do with it that, aside from obviously raising money, is second being like we're actually establishing connections with the artists. So we had some people from the very beginning. Early on, we started recruiting artists on social media and forming relationships with the artists, which Charlene can probably talk about a little bit more because she was directly in communication with a lot of them. But it was really exciting to see that community kind of build around them, and them to get excited about the launch of the website, and them to be like waiting for a few months, and then finally the website happens. Like, look, I am contributing to this, and it's exciting.
That's amazing.
Yeah. In regards to like our artists, we've changed a lot from what we were when we started, which was very unorganized and not knowing what we were doing. And we all kind of came to this with like our little corner of expertise, and then now we've kind of created something out of it that works. I mean, that I'm surprised by it, to be honest. But in terms of artists, there's so many great things about how we've changed since we launched. And I feel that there's like an increased responsibility that we have towards the artists. For example, for me, in terms of marketing, and my team, obviously, that what we do directly impacts whether people are getting money this month or not, like when it comes to Black artists. So it's changed in some really great, rewarding ways, but there's also like an underlying pressure behind it that is motivating and terrifying.
Yeah. I think we know what you mean by that for sure. And that kind of leads me into that next question that I wanted to ask you guys, which is about that role of the artist when it comes to social media, because you are using your platform to promote those artists. Those artists are using their activism to help others. You all in turn are helping these wonderful organizations. It's a very chain reaction, and we understand those pressures, and we acknowledge that, and just the power of your platform and what comes with that. But the ways artists have been able to expand their reach with these digital mediums has increased during this pandemic, and just in the short span has changed immensely. So have you guys seen that direct impact that the artists that you're working with have had on you and have had on these organizations that you're working with? What has that been like?
There's like so many facets to like social media and the artists, and like so many of them are amazing. People have so much more accessibility to art, and so much more accessibility to like art education. People get to grow a platform very quickly. In a weird way, it's making art more democratic, right? And we can like feel that through our platform. But then there's also, again, like this weird pressure to be like, to be productive with your art and keep posting and making sure that your art is is likable in a way,
Right.
And relevant. Yeah.
It feels
Yeah,
like there's like an abandonment of art for art's sake, and everything has to be like so saturated with this like high intensity meaning.
yeah, and a meaning that can be very easily digested when you're scrolling,
Yes.
like when
Hmm.
someone's just mindlessly scrolling. So I love social media when it comes to a lot of things that it's done for art and for our platform as well. But I definitely think that something that we want to do with our platform is make sure that the art stays close to what the artist wants to do with it. So
Mm.
while we do post a lot of the works that get sold on our website, we also make a point of on our website making sure that the artist has space to like talk about like who they are as an artist, you know. And I don't know, I think that's quite important as well. I think social media is an amazing tool that we definitely benefit from, and again, like makes especially the production of art and who gets access to what so much more fair, right? But
Mhm.
at the same time, like I think people need to have a deeper understanding of the amount of work that goes into pieces. So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And going back to what Bianca said just about this, and it's something we talk about a lot, this saturation of the art world within social media. And I'm sure that it has been really difficult for you guys as well to kind of, rifle through all those works that you guys are receiving and working with all these artists and how to kind of fairly go about, highlighting each artwork, selling each artwork. But that's amazing, that relationship that you all have built with the artists and trying to understand what their vision is and how to promote that in a fair way. Even just looking at what I've seen so far on your website, the breadth of artwork that you guys do have up there is really wide. And I really liked that a lot of the abstract works that you guys have on there, the figurative work you guys have on your website is beautiful. And just in the short time that your art has been up on your website, to see the range that you all have exhibited so far, I think is really a testament to how well this is working. And it's exciting to see that that's already happening now, and what you guys are going to put on your website in the future is really exciting. So I hope that you guys are reaching that wide span of Black artists, because it seems like you really are right now.
yeah, yeah, it's amazing. Like we do talk to all of the artists, and when we talk to them, we do try and make sure that this is like a beneficial relationship for them, because I mean we are just in the beginning stages. There's not going to be like a bunch of sales each month.
Mhm.
So building a community and highlighting like the artists and the work that artists put into their craft is something that is super important. Like so like it's the backbone of what we do essentially. So we do and try and make sure that we stay true to that at all times, and hopefully that our artists know that if they need support with something else, then we're here basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's so it's so encouraging to hear that. And I think with given all of the news we've heard, especially I'm thinking about just an example coming from the Whitney where they were buying art from Black artists and wanting to showcase it without giving them, the proper monetary compensation, but, presence even in the digital realm that they deserved. So I think yeah, exactly, just to reiterate what Gianna said, it's amazing to see that happen. um
I mean, we could still like. I feel like again, we are starting out, and we don't have like a huge loyal customer base at this point. So while this is definitely something that we are building constantly, and we like our artists are not getting enough money for what they're doing right now.
yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
One of the things, like as we grow especially, is just kind of thinking about the heart of this being our artists. A lot of them, they're just kind of donating their works as well and putting a spotlight on them. So in the future, we're hoping to get involved with like artist interviews and maybe putting profiles of our artists with the interviews that we do with them on the website as well. So that's definitely something that's super important to the mission.
But actually, just to like raise a point, like from what you were saying before, how things have changed after we launched. Like I said, in a lot of ways, it's been amazing, especially that rewarding aspect of seeing things come to fruition, actually being able to raise the money. In a way, it's kind of weird though, because I feel like before we had a lot of like, when it comes to like what we put out on social media, we had a lot of space to be like this educational platform that sort of effort into infographics and, you know, like stays up to date on like this and this and this. And right now, like hopefully that will again like change a little bit once we get more established. Right now, it has become like pushing sales a lot. So like we started this artist interview initiative actually quite some time ago, and we had to put it on ice because we were just like, nah, actually we need to put our effort into making sure that our artists get paid.
Right. Yeah. It's such a weird thing. I feel like in the arts, whenever the arts work as this catalyst to push you towards so many different opportunities, and it feels so hard when you want to do every single thing on this platform, and then in practicality, like there are those hurdles that you have to figure out, and it's so tough to figure out what's the best thing to do for us, but then are we doing the right thing? Like we hope that the right thing and the best thing for everyone will align all in one, but it's weird to kind of navigate that process as well.
Yeah, especially for you all, because in going through your website as well, your team is fairly large.
Yeah, it's
Since you
so
guys have just
impressive.
started out, and it's really wonderful to see the diverse backgrounds that you guys come from. I think I was reading today that you have like a neuroscientist on your team. You have marketing and communications, you have graphic design. I was like, they got a neuroscientist? Like, Bianca, we don't got a neuroscientist. Like, we got to get on that. Like,
to address the neuroscientist bit, Charlene and I actually were masters of neuroaesthetics because we just finished our master's degrees. It's not we're not like neuroscientists, like I have a brain in my kitchen or something.
I have a brain in my kitchen, actually.
Charlene does have a couple of brains. But it is though. But cool, to have like people from so many backgrounds in the group.
It's wonderful. And I mean, anytime we just see, especially the arts and the science merging, it's just a really exciting moment for us. And it just goes, you know, it's a testament to what you guys are doing. That art is for everyone. There are ways to support artists and be involved in arts. So
I just to like, because you mentioned arts and science, I don't want to like
you were gonna do this.
I don't want to sidetrack the conversation.
Please love a good
take over.
But if you are interested, I can plug our master's degree. It's psychology of the arts, neuroaesthetics, and creativity. So basically we just like learned about the psychology and neuroscience of like art and beauty. And I'll say that like it's a really, really interesting, like, I don't want to say like up and coming field, but like a little bit in psychology. But it's really interesting because I will say that some of the things that we learned in the master's degree encouraged me in some ways to do this, because there's one lesson I remember about like art and well-being and how engaging with the arts has an impact on like your mental health. And there's a lot of pretty valid research out there that shows that. And I think it's something that really, really needs to be looked into, and something that is really, really worth exploring. And thinking about this movement that's like really, really centered around like trauma and anger. How do we bring art into it? So like one of the things obviously was like, we need to raise money for this movement. But another one of the things was like, art can be this really amazing vehicle for like expressing your emotions, and artists can work through their emotions and like their reactions to what they're seeing using art. And I think that's like super powerful.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So if you guys need a neuroscientist on your team.
Oh my gosh. Can you guys come
This
just hang
meeting is
out?
just about poaching team members.
We're trying to merge APT and ARTXBLM. That's actually the goal here. Going off of thinking about these conversations that we're having in our world that many people are new to, that they are trying to insert themselves in actively, can you talk about art and anti-racism? If you wanted to share some lessons with our listeners about what can art mean for teaching anti-racist practices, what would those be?
Yeah, totally. So kind of going back to what I was just saying about the act of art making.
Yeah.
I think we have a tendency to think about like art as an output and what that like the role of that in society and in the world and how it affects people. But I think there's another side of it that's just as equally important, which is the actual like act of engaging and making art. So I had this moment. It was before I started ARTXBLM, but was just like reflecting a lot. Where I was working with a musician who I had like done commission for before, and I was designing artwork for his single. His name is XOXOK. The song is Right On. It's a beautiful song. Just for a shameless plug to him.
Okay, we're gonna highlight it. No.
Awesome.
Just keep plugging.
I was gonna drop names.
Just keep them coming, and we'll like make up a list.
And this one goes out to my parents. No.
I would like to thank my therapist.
But yeah, so he reached out to me and he was like, I want you to design this single artwork, and he shared the song with me, and the song is about his experience as a Black man when he's like going driving and he sees a police car and like the fear that he has that he might not survive an interaction with the police. And it's a really beautiful, moving song, and we spoke about like what we want the cover artwork to be, and ended up agreeing on the image being a cracked phone, like a hand holding a phone when the screen is cracked, and then the screensaver on the phone was going to be a picture of like a young Black man who had graduated like in his cap and gown. And so when I was working on this art, and I work like digitally, so I use like Adobe Illustrator, I do like a little bit of tracing, I had chosen to design like the image of the young Black man after Michael Brown. So I found a photo of Michael Brown in his cap and gown that you've probably all seen, and just had it on my screen and spent like a couple of hours of just like studying the image and tracing it. And I, just as like a person doing that, you're really connecting with a human being and like what he represents. And I felt like I got really emotional doing it at times, and I was just, like drawing lines on a computer screen, but like also studying a person's face and studying his expression and like who he is. And this is a way of engaging with art and art making. Yes, it was like as part of a project, it was part of a commission, and there was an output to it, but like it's really hard to put words to the experience of doing something like that. So when we talk about art and anti-racism, I really don't think we should overlook like how we can use art to process feelings and to think about things and kind of like meditate on them as well.
It'll be interesting to see, how your platform expands, how you can reach people through those interdisciplinary practices that come with art. We talk about a lot, it's important to experience the art, whether for yourself or if you're trying to walk in the shoes of another artist. The practice of making is just as important as the process of learning. And it'll be cool to see you guys work with your artists in the future and kind of push that practice.
I mean, you sent us like a rough version of these questions before, so we actually went through the website and just checked what like our artists actually were saying about this topic. And like how art and anti-racism, and I thought it would like be quite good to just like, I mean, both of us are artists, but we don't have any prints up on ARTXBLM as of now, so I think it would be good to just go through those.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we have like quite a few themes on here actually. In terms of like what everyone was saying, a lot of healing came up a lot. And also like just recreating your own narrative, and representation was a huge part of what people were saying. Just seeing yourself and like your identity in more art. That can be a way as well in which art and anti-racism should go hand in hand. We also have like a teacher who's using it for educational purposes. um yeah, we have like just so much. I mean, please, there's like so many takes on this, and I think everyone
Yeah.
has a bit of a different like just view on how to interact with living essentially, and like living
Yeah.
in like in this climate. So personally, I just feel like art has this amazing ability to give people that space to find their voice and find like whether what they're looking for in it, whether they're looking for representation or healing or like just venting, you know, like there's so many ways in which art should be part of a movement.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's
And I
kind of
think
Yeah,
like using your platform and giving people that purpose to work through their emotions and work through the trauma in our world. And I think that's really important that your artists are also using your platform to their advantage in the ways that work for them.
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
And
I'd say like go to the site and read the artist bios also. We were just doing that like in before we came and spoke to you, but like it's nice to refresh our minds about them because there's so much diversity and intention, and I think that's really
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. Like one of our team members, her name is Sydney, is I have like a little clip it from her bio, and she says Sydney loves drawing happy children and big afros, nappy, kinky, curly, short, or shaved. She wants every little kid to love their hair. And another one of our artists, Khalil, was talking about how his pieces are representations of Black characters and events, about like basically creating characters that he doesn't see in media that represent
Mm-hmm.
him. And you look through, yeah, our artists, a lot of them have completely different goals from each other,
Yeah.
but all of them ultimately get this like really great benefit out of being artists.
And I think that also in turn will reflect on the person who buys that art, purchases it, and then brings it into their own space as well. So
Yeah.
looking across not just at the bios, but even just taking in the work itself, you guys have such the artist offers such a diverse array of just content within the piece itself, so that all of these different mindsets are coming through the artist's voice, but also through the images that they're projecting, and then someone is bringing that into their space and really taking that in. I think is so cool.
Yeah, definitely.
So, ARTXBLM exists within a multicultural and intersectional narrative. So, it's this moment along with its diverse communities, that it's not just an American movement like you all are in London. So, with that, can we please talk about just the globalism of it all and, what art and this movement are providing for communities across the world?
Yeah, I think Charlene has some really great thoughts about this because I'm an American living in London, but
yeah.
Charlene is like a
Mhm.
true European person.
Yeah, I'm so excited to hear you guys talk about this.
Well, I mean, I have a couple of hot takes on this. I'm not gonna get too far into them, actually.
Anything you want to say, please.
I right. So I feel like there is definitely a tendency of people to, wherever they are. I mean, some like obviously if you're in America, you should center the conversation around America. But people often in other countries center the conversation, any conversation about race, like they center the American perspective quite a lot. And also, like, just in a generally, people center English speaking narratives a lot, like English narratives, like anyone who can speak English, a whole lot more than they do with other languages. As someone who speaks other languages, that can be like extremely frustrating, because you see that, yes, Black Lives Matter, but they don't just matter in the UK and the US, they matter other places. And you just see like a very, like, you can see the hypocrisy in some of the things that come like with online activism specifically. But again, I think that that's the beauty of art, because you can say a lot without speaking a language, you know. Like for an example, I don't know if you guys caught up in it, but with the End SARS movement in Nigeria, I hope I said that right, because I only saw it online. I never actually had someone talk about it. But there was like a lot of protest there, a lot of police brutality, and the way that it got spread around, because I don't speak like any Nigerian languages, so the way that it got spread around on the internet was through like this visual of like the Nigerian flag with blood on it from those protests. So I think art is extremely powerful in just kind of trying to close that bridge. ARTXBLM is specifically about something, but I think it's part of like a larger movement that we are seeing on social media, where we are starting to understand through like videos and like these visuals that we didn't have access through beforehand, that we have kind of been living in our little bubbles like a bit. So I think that art is a huge part of that, actually.
Yeah, for sure. And even what you just said, not just art, but what Bianca and I refer to, you know, our visual world, how we navigate that, why studying art is so important, why it's important to be in tune to what we are intaking visually. And we know that we're inundated with so much information. And Bianca will ask you all, you know, a question in a bit about art as a universal language. And I've just talked and studied that topic within a curatorial setting, you know, art as universal language. And I think sometimes it can be brushed off, or like, okay, yeah, we get it. Like everyone can look at a painting. But when it comes to something like you just said, language barriers, and especially like the whole westernization of art, like that needs to be a part of it and important, because if we're not going to be able to speak the same language as other people, then we need to be in tune with what these visuals are that we're seeing.
Another thing that when I was thinking about this question, we thought of a little bit was, it's funny to call it art, but the moment when everyone posted a black square on their feed, and this is, I mean, like, this is visual, right? Like, this is like a very viral visual moment. It's just a black square. Can we call it art? That's a philosophical question. But it's interesting, because I still think it really applies to this conversation, because there's no language and they're involved, and that as like a concept is so complex and so dynamic. The fact that like people are trying to be supportive, and they're doing this thing because they're trying to be supportive, and they're just entering a conversation that like maybe they need to sit back on for a little bit, and it ends up being a bit more harmful than it is helpful. And I think this can be applied to when we see images, and again, like maybe this doesn't fully apply to art, but when we see images in the media that are played over and over again, like camera footage of people being attacked or murdered or profiled, those things have a really big impact. Those things go viral. And for people who around the world who consume those things, you know, like that's their first exposure to it. And it is a very interesting thing because we have like, we're given a lot of information without context.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to contain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to get back to those black squares as well, because I think actually they're kind of the lack of the visual, you know, like they are just a black square on a medium where we are used to looking at images.
Mm-hmm.
So while you could, I mean, I feel like it was muting the conversation as opposed to actually starting one, you know, and it's interesting how that was done with the absence of a visual again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
And, you know, it'll be, you know, that's our favorite question to ask, like, what is art? What is an art? And I think at some point in time, we're going to come across someone recontextualizing what a, you know, an empty space, a blank canvas is. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the recent future, that's something that we did see in a formal museum setting. It'll be interesting to see, you know, what still comes of that as we're still dealing with the aftermath of this recent political and social climate. But kind of talking about starting those conversations on social media, because your platform is so social media heavy, I want to talk about, you know, how does ARTXBLM share and create a dialogue across all these intersecting points of this movement, and what you guys want to say with your platform through art?
Yeah, so we thought about this, and the answer right now is that like maybe we aren't successful at this quite yet, because, you know, basically essentially what we did is it's not a business because it's not for profit, but like an e-commerce website, that's what we're doing, is running and operating an e-commerce site. And we have to do that by considering who our audience is and where we're going to make money and where we're going to have the most impact. So I'll say right now, all of our charities are US based, and all of our operations are way easier because they're based in the US, or not all of them, but the ones that are based in the US are easier and cheaper. And so it ends up being that the organization and platform does have a bias towards like America and like American aesthetics.
As it should at this point, I think. Like, I don't really like. We created this because George Floyd was murdered, because that's part of systematic violence in America. But in terms of dialogue, I think we're, like Sophia said, we're like just quite caught up in just finding our own voice at the moment.
Yeah, this is something that is like, yeah, will come with becoming more established with, you know, hopefully filing as a nonprofit and getting discounts on everything, right? They're amazing discounts, which means that we'll be donating more, which is obviously like what we want. But, and it, you know, it comes with like all of our team members being volunteers, right? Like we all do this in our free time because we're passionate about this. But yeah, there's limitations on it, and we know that it's really important to be more considerate of, you know, all of the intersecting points of the movement and seeing outside of like our biases and our privileges. But yeah, at the moment, it's hard to do. It's hard to be like all the time, be like, these are all the things that we have to be thinking about, and we have to hit every single point, because when you do that, you start to get overwhelmed. But not to like excuse anything, but
it's definitely something that we just want to become more systematic at, maybe. Where we are talking to all of our artists right now. We're trying to support them in any way that we can. But in the future, it would be amazing to have the artists be able to talk to each other and building a community that way, for example.
Yeah. And even doing like community projects with your artists in those communities would be really cool as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be so fun. Like,
it would
in
be
person,
so cool.
like a big collective, like doing art together. And because I mean, I think like to both what Gianna was saying and what Sophia was saying, there are these like weird bubbles of isolation. I think, Gianna and I are not the people going through this type of trauma that the larger, collective is trying to put that dialogue into. And I don't know, it's such a strange balance to observe all of these things are going on. Then there are the people who are actually being constantly impacted by this, and then creating those dialogues. And then within those bubbles, you have a million conversations over here and a million different perspectives and points of view, and every person is coming at everything from a completely different set of experiences. And I think that's the point that both of you guys are making, which is so interesting, just to see how like the arts from the four of ours perspective fits into all of those. And it's just such an interesting and completely complex web of discussions in an isolated world as it is right now, which is all, I don't know, just, it's so wild. I'm sorry, I'm just like talking out loud, kind of rambling, but
no, it's true. I think that's why it's, yeah, like I said, and like you're saying, it's so easy to get overwhelmed, but one of the most powerful things is just community and dialogues. So that kind of is what we do. What we have to do is just encourage people to have honest conversations and bring their perspectives to the table. And I think we can do it. Because if you try to be okay, here's every single thing that we need to fix in the world,
it's just not going to happen.
You will be paralyzed.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think also a cool thing to also think about is how art collectives also formulate and take place online in different ways. And another thing you guys could potentially think about doing in the future are online exhibitions, especially during this pandemic, have become an extremely popular thing. They've always been there and they've been a thing, but I've been in multiple online shows in the pandemic because my art is sculptural and I don't feel comfortable traveling right now. And so if there was ever a time where you all did want to perhaps focus on one issue or pinpoint one issue, the idea of a juried online exhibition could be a good way for you guys to perhaps go about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that idea. We've spoken a little bit very recently about maybe expanding and doing little virtual conferences or talks and discussions about different topics in the intersection of art and activism. But the online exhibition, I might have to steal that idea.
Just exciting to me to take in all these different ideas. And it's just, back to, I don't know, circling back, there's so many different opportunities and ideas, and our online world is expanding, and it's really exciting to see. I mean, at the same time, the overwhelmingness of it all and the time of, in the day that you have to reach a bunch of people can feel overwhelming, but all cool things. I want to get back to this idea of a universal language. You guys were hitting on this a little bit in our discussion, but is there anything else you want to say about what art as a universal language means specifically for ARTXBLM, and just anything else to add to that?
Yeah, so in terms of as a universal language, and then the other point about accessibility for this question, thinking about making how we can use art to share concepts, right? I don't know if I can say universal language about this, because it would be in a language, but just infographics. So I think there was a moment in the summer where everyone was sharing infographics all the time. Everyone's story, you're clicking through it and it's just infographic after infographic. And like I said, while you can't say art is a universal language, I think what we can do using art and visual concepts and graphics is portray information in a way that's easier to understand. And that like kind of infographic complex that started is like a interesting way to do so, and like can be a very good one, because I see a lot of times there being complex topics or like complex situations or things happening around the world that I might not know about unless I was watching the news every morning like my mom, but I don't do that. And you know, like we also really choose the information that we consume in these days, and I think a lot of people just choose to like look at Instagram. So the fact that like educational information kind of seeped into these social platforms that weren't really previously educational in nature at all, I think art really aided in that, because we're talking about like design concepts and making things readable and catchy and easy to understand, and like taking away academic language from concepts. So in that sense, we have art making things more accessible.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was talking about how artists are, you know, kind of, what's the word, notoriously like not paid well, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of raises an interesting issue for us and like our mission, because we respect artists, we respect art, and we want to support artists and support their art practice. And artists want to support the movement. And so we, like in our mission to do so, we have artists coming to us because they want to support a movement, but maybe they don't have the money to do so because they're not being paid super well to be able to donate. So by like choosing to like come to us and share their art with us, we're making like their activism, I don't want to say we're making their activism accessible, but kind of making our platform a point in which they can kind of work through to participate in this movement. Which maybe I'm rambling a little bit, I've lost my train of thought, but this is an interesting thing to think about.
So on APT, we are obviously all about the arts and pop culture. So I wanted to ask how you have experienced BLM as not just an artistic movement, but one that has the power to change pop culture and pop visuals as well.
Yeah, so I think like the biggest thing when we think about the Black Lives Matter movement and in like pop culture is thinking about its like seasonal nature. I like, it was really like a very, very interesting moment in the summer, and I like find myself saying the word moment in kind of like a discouraging way, right?
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Because it was this period in time when like I see people engaging in a conversation and like talking about racism in America, people that I've never seen do that before, and like it was surreal for this time. And it's so weird to be like, there's this really distinct period of time that like everyone seemed to care about racism, and everyone seemed to say like, I'm gonna do it, we're gonna defeat racism now. And like we all know what happened. And it's hard to think back to that and the way that our worlds, our lives don't look like that right now. So I think there was just like, it's frustrating to think about it this way, and to see how like a movement really has to be trendy to get like attention, to get traction, to get people to contribute to it. And I think this is just like a big question that like activists struggle with a lot. I know I do, and even like I'm sure Charlene can speak to this, but like with marketing, like we won't, if our website had been running during June, I guarantee you our sales would be through the roof. And right now, like they aren't. And like we know that trendiness of movement plays a part, and like people's guilt about not contributing to one also. And it's, like I said, it's frustrating and, like a bit sad.
Yeah.
But it's odd because like there was a moment where I think a lot of people felt like this is a turning point, and in some ways it was, because I think a lot of people took a moment to like educate themselves about a topic that they hadn't been educated in. But I guess the question then is, how do you make something like this sustainable? How do you make like the passion sustainable? And that is one of like our missions, right? That's one of our goals. It's very hard to do.
And that's kind of, I mean, in a weird way, I think everyone kind of did anticipate this while all the black squares were being posted. I think everyone kind of knew that this was gonna be a month or two, like at most. So I think even just the idea of ARTXBLM, in a way, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Sophia, but I feel like in a way it was like a little bit pessimistic, because we were like, what do people buy continuously?
Yeah, we really felt like we were like fighting against a clock, and like it was also interesting because we chose the charities that we wanted to donate to kind of based on like the current situation. And as time went on and we like were all working on building this website and getting everything going, we knew that really pessimistically people were losing interest, and that's sad.
Yeah.
And I will say that like I obviously have a little bit of rage about this topic, but things like ARTXBLM, we're not the only one. I think like I said, in terms of what we're seeing on like our social media channels and just like normal media channels now, they seem like we've forgotten this topic. But I think this was also the birth of like a lot of digital organizing and a lot of community building. And I think that like those connections being strengthened is really, really important. And I think they're happening. Just like this, just ARTXBLM, just speaking from my experience of this group, like all the people that we've been able to bring together to work on this project, late at night sometimes, on the weekends, like all of us in our free time, has been really, really inspiring. And I think, and also bred out of the pandemic, of course, everyone's just like at home and like everything has to be done online. So I think it's going to be interesting when things are open again, when like there's some kind of similar to normality that happens. I don't know.
Right. It's interesting to see reverberations and this wave kind of continue throughout these little it feels like instead of consistently holding people and organizations accountable, again, it's like these little spikes of information that you get. It's like these little spikes of a conversation or a dialogue. And I feel like that in what I intake is coming up in like TV shows and cinema. And I think it's, especially with like the Golden Globes coming out, in the television shows I'm watching, there are these almost like perfectly placed conversations. And I think that's a really interesting thing. Like, this is great, but how do we hold something like that accountable? Like, how do we say this is encouraging to see and I'm excited about this conversation, while holding that kind of huge institution of these images that exist within pop culture? Like, how do we keep that momentum up?
Yeah, but it's interesting also because like I think like we will and begin to see changes in pop culture, but I wonder if that like when it comes down to it, the issues stem from really deep structural and institutional and historical things. And I wonder if, like, there's always a moment where these pop culture gestures of, like, we're having the conversation, we're doing the work, feel very empty. And I wonder, like, at what point do those actually, like, trickle down to us seeing changes made in the way the country is run and the way that this, you know, society is.
Right.
And especially talking about art, because art, like, it's complicated, right? Because I mean, most people who get to dictate or have been able to dictate what art is and what art isn't are not really representative of, like, the diversity of this planet, essentially. And a lot of the art we visit in museums is just stolen, quite frankly. So I feel like we are seeing this, like I said, on social media and stuff, but I don't think these conversations are really and truly getting somewhere when it comes to, like, institutions. Or at least, I mean, maybe I'm being negative, but it does feel like the conversations that are being held around racism are just like, what can we do to shut these people up? As opposed to, let's just dig into this and let's just try and learn, essentially.
And that's something I think we've seen with Instagram accounts. Just, I mean, the natural environment that social media has produced for us during the larger global pandemic, with accounts like Change the Museum and A Better Guggenheim. And then, you know, the other day or last week, it was the Indianapolis Museum of Art had the job listing, and it's like, how do these conversations, like you said, if they're continuing at all, like, how does that get built up? Like, how do we continue this in a way that works through those systems that you were talking about?
And those were actually also the first platforms that, like, when we were starting out and had like a following of 100 people or something, those were the first people who started to support us, actually.
That's amazing.
So, really amazing accounts. Like, if anyone who's listening hasn't followed them, please do.
So just, I want to be mindful of you guys' time. Can we talk about what the next steps for you guys are? We've talked a lot about, like, all these different things that you guys can do, but is there a specific goal that you really see in mind, that you really want our listeners to kind of think about?
Well, in terms of next steps, I think there's a lot of things that we've already discussed that are, like, really things that we want to do. Number one at the top of the list is, like, actually file as a nonprofit in the US.
That's awesome.
Like, this will help us achieve our goals so much. Like, a lot of our fees, and, like, there's fees in everything, and everything that we pay, like PayPal, there's transaction fee, and, like, the Squarespace site, there's fees, and so many of these things offer, like, huge significant discounts for, like, filed nonprofits, and the more we can reduce those fees, the more money that we can actually raise. So that is biggest goal of, like, things in the works, and we are, like, working towards, like, drawing up all of the papers. Our amazing legal team is
awesome.
drawing up, you know, the things that we need to do so. But past that, just grow as a platform. Sorry.
We want to sell more prints.
Second to that, sell more prints, raise the money. We, like, buy a print. Every person who's listening is obligated to.
Pop-Tarts are required.
Go in Pop-Tarts. There's a lot of beautiful art from very amazing artists that you can choose from. So obviously, like, keep selling prints, sell more prints, grow as a community, especially create a space where artists can engage with one another as, like, members of ARTXBLM. would be amazing to have like an artist meetup at some point.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Maybe a virtual exhibition.
Gianna's like ready for this. She just wants to see more art.
Virtual events, obviously, to like get things started, and then one day we'd love to have real in-person events, possibly workshops, holding like events and conferences and panels and talks. Big goal. We have this beautiful warehouse where we do all of the printing in-house, and we host workshops every weekend, and we hold little like exhibitions in our beautiful warehouse. But yeah,
that's so nice. I want to go there now. Like, yeah.
Doesn't it sound so beautiful? There's plants everywhere, and it has so much natural sunlight.
But in terms of like small steps, I would actually love to the team at some point, because there's like 80% of them I've never met before.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah. It was really interesting when we had our website launch. We had a phone call. We do everything on Google Meet, so we had like a Google Meet call where we all like hopped on, and our website lead just like hit the button that was like, okay, it's live now. You know, like if we all were in person, would have had like a real event where we all like hung out and partied to celebrate. It was like really big accomplishment. But it was funny because it was just like pressing the button, and then someone played the little like foghorn effect that was like this like weirdness, like anticlimactic nature of things these days, because you're just like sitting in a room. You just did something.
But we know how hard it is to keep that motivation going, especially when you're not with the physical people, and it's hard not to see the physical change. And when you're doing this in your spare time, we know exactly how that is. And, you know, we just are here to also be like your biggest supporters and just tell you guys what you were doing is important. And, you know, if you do need a little like cheerleader at any point, like, because sometimes you do need that, like the Artpop
when you guys launch something else, we'll just come on and like throw another party.
Oh my God, you're going to be our guest of honors at our next launch, virtual launch.
Yes.
That's really sweet. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, I just wanted to like give like a massive shout out to like all of our team, a lot of whom wanted to actually be here, and just emphasize that, like, I mean, we are a very small part of ARTXBLM. Like you guys said, the team is pretty huge at this point, and every one of them has worked incredibly hard, like in their free time, volunteering, to make sure that ARTXBLM is up and running. So like, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Absolutely reiterating everything Shirlene just said. Our team is incredible, and I know I've said it a bunch already, but we're volunteers. A lot of us students have full-time jobs, part-time jobs, other responsibilities, and working into wee hours sometimes on this. And every single person on that site has been such an essential part of what we do and our success.
That's amazing.
Okay, so we kind of like to end our episodes with just asking you all a fun question. So we just want to know, like, what has been your favorite highlight or moment since starting ARTXBLM?
Yeah, totally. I think one of them was the launch that I just mentioned, our little virtual launch party. The other one was the very, very beginning of it. I think there was a moment where I was like, what am I going to do right now? I'm like filled with anger, and I want to like do something with this. I want to like be a part of this thing. And it was like weird and awkward putting out like this little call to action about a concept that I like didn't even know what it was. Mm-hmm. And it was like really, really cool when like people, a lot of them like really close friends of mine, started reaching out and being like, I want to do this thing you're talking about. I'm not sure what it is, but like I want to be a part of it. And it like I remember being in my room and like putting a nice blouse on and doing like our first video call and being like, okay, what's gonna happen? Like, what are we gonna do? And then just like
so awkward.
It was, yeah, that first call was really awkward because I just kind of was like, okay, everyone, say your name, say what you do, and everyone hates doing that. But it was funny, and like and exciting to just like see it through, to just like get things kicking off, like start like making these calls, designing the websites, like making all of these really major decisions, and watching this like seed of an idea really like begin to blossom was so cool. Because I don't know, like I think a lot of us want to do things a lot, but it was one of those like rare and kind of lucky moments that like I actually was like, I'm gonna do something. I don't know what it is. I'm gonna do it. And it was
every day when I wake up, but it never actually happens. I never actually do anything.
You do this thing.
I'm like, I should like do something, and then I'm like, sleeping. That's what I should do.
What I was doing was watching Are You the One, because Netflix told me to.
You need to give a review after this because I'm out of stuff to watch.
Ooh, what did Lupin is something that
watched it. Listen, you can't.
Oh my gosh.
I haven't finished it yet, but what I saw I really enjoyed.
It was so good.
It was so good.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so good. I just like I was telling the girls, like I need a good art heist movie. You know what I mean? I feel like I want more of them, and I love that I had like a little mini series to give me this like, I don't know, just some like a well-made art heist that theoretically for the purposes of a show makes sense, you know. Like it still kind of exists within a fantasy, but I'm like, okay, like it like he could do it, you know. It's like he could totally pull this off.
Totally.
Oh my God.
And you could, like, obviously.
No, and he did. Like, Charlene, do you have anything that you want to highlight about working with ARTXBLM?
I am constantly stressed, but yeah. I mean, I guess for me, it's gonna be when these platforms, like I said, started like reposting our stuff, and like No White Saviors, I think. I'm not sure whether it was No White Saviors, but one of those like really huge ones posted an infographic of ours like on their feed and stuff.
That's awesome.
And it just felt like, oh my God, people are listening. Like, wow. And then another like great thing, at least for me, is just like I work with a team of like, it's now 5, but we used to be 4 people, and it's just really nice.
That's so awesome. I love it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, ladies, we can't thank you enough for being here with us today. We so appreciate everything that you're doing and your time. And hey, you were on a podcast today, so you can check that off your list and go back to watching Netflix, because that's what we'll do. Yeah. But before we go, can you please tell everyone where they can find and go support ARTXBLM?
Yep. www.artxblm.com. Like I said, every listener has to buy a print for themselves and
You're required.
their
This is the homework.
best friend and their grandparents and their
nice, yeah, but like seriously, buy a print.
We need to put that in our newsletter for the month. Like,
yes.
No, but seriously, like, this isn't.
That would be amazing, actually. Yeah.
Yes, we can definitely do that.
Yeah, and then we are on several social media platforms at ARTXBLM.
We're actually launching our TikTok, so that's fun. So we're on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and Twitter, and it's just ARTXBLM everywhere.
Perfect.
And I think we already have the TikTok account, but we haven't. Like, there's no videos on there yet.
Okay.
But if you want to go ahead and
I'll go follow
yeah.
right after this from all of my accounts.
Amazing. And then also we just wanted to shout out to like a couple of our artists that have things going on.
Yes.
There's one, her name is Joy Houlder, and she wrote a book that's like based on her little brother. It's like an illustrated book.
Amazing.
It's called Calvin Dreams, and that he will be bigger than the moon, and it's about her little brother and like in, I don't know, his dream world. And it's great. And then another one of our artists, her name is Ellie Medley, and she sells earrings also at Urban Medley Design. And then another one of our artists who's also an organizer, her name is Shilpa Kancharla, has her own like personal store where she sells her own prints, and I think she's dabbling in jewelry now too, and that's Shilpa Kancharla's store. So yeah, check all of them out. Check out the website, read the artist bios, read every piece of text on the website, read our code of conduct if you want to.
Yes. We will
read
link
our privacy policy.
We will link all of this for the Artpop Tarts in our show notes on our resources page. But we can't thank you guys enough for being here. I mean, we've wanted you guys on for so long, and I'm just so glad that we were able to finally meet up, and I hope we can do it again soon. I hope we can come to that online exhibition.
Yeah, I'm so glad we were finally able to do this.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's so nice. It's so nice.
Well, ladies, thank you so much. And everyone at home, we will talk to you all on Tuesday. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been amazing. And just thank you for getting in touch. And also thank you for continually supporting our content. It means a lot.
Absolutely.